We are live, sir.
All right, everybody. This is episode 32 of the Beef and Bitcoin podcast with your host, Brett and CH. Wanted to record a quick episode here because a lot happened in the last, couple days since we last recorded. Fed cut rates. We talked about that last week. It looks like the equities market definitely responded there. So we dumped a bit in the past couple days. Today on August 6th, for the general indices, we did see a little bit of a recovery, but I mean, it still looks kind of shitty. There's just a ton of negative yielding debt, and we kind of wanted to go into what does that mean for safe haven assets like Bitcoin, like gold, and UBS is also looking to basically charge people for holding over €500,000 in their bank accounts. So hitting them with that negative yield essentially, and there's plenty of high net worth individuals with that kind of liquid cash sitting in their accounts. So does that make them stop and say, well, wait a second, why am I gonna get hit with this negative yield, with these fees for just leaving my money in the bank? So interesting times for sure. But what are you thinking about all this stuff?
It's definitely pretty interesting in terms of the holding money in the bank thing's interesting, because even I went to go open a new checking account the other day, and I was looking, and it wasn't much, but it was still I was like, wow, you have to have X amount of dollars, otherwise they take away $25, $30 a month. And this is
Right.
for basic accounts. Even when you get the higher ones, it's different. But still, I was like, wow. I was like, for the average person who just puts a little bit into a checking account, they don't even realize that if they don't have over X amount of dollars a month, you're getting money taken away, which is insane. And people just aren't even thinking about it. That's pretty scary. I wasn't trying to be combative with them, but I was like, is there any way? You have to have over a certain limit, which was an issue. But I was just like, I didn't see that at first. It just said, this is the charge per month in this account. And I'm like, this is insane. I told her, I was like, I'd rather just go hold cash, or I'm going to go look at another bank. It's like, I'm just not going to lose money by holding money in the bank. That's not how it should work. You should be paid interest, and you should be paid a real amount of interest considering our inflation now. Realistically, the interest rates right now, if I don't know if I'm wrong on this, but they'd probably be the 6 to 10% range at least, if you really wanted to keep up with inflation. And that would change the whole market outlook incredibly.
Right. That's really interesting that you threw out that 6 to 7% figure, because that's exactly what BlockFi is offering people who are using their multi-sig Bitcoin wallet that allows them to essentially earn interest on their Bitcoin. And what BlockFi does is they're allowing short sellers basically to use that Bitcoin, and they're making I'm guessing 12% return, and then they're going to keep half of that, and you get the other half, right? So you get 6%. It's interesting because for lending Bitcoin, I feel like that interest rate's low, because if they're short and all of a sudden we just take off, there's a good chance that you won't be able to recover all your principal, right? The Bitcoin's gone. That's what happens when you have an asset that's fixed supply. So while I'm not 100% sold on the idea of earning interest on Bitcoin by lending it, I think it can be a necessary thing that all markets need, and that's going to mature. But when you compare that with, nothing in a regular checking account, or even worse, fees to leave your money in the bank, and you don't think about it, but these overdraft fees, all this stuff, they really add up. I mean, it's billions in fees per year, and it's like a revenue generator for the banks. And the people who are having the most difficulty with their finances are the ones who get hit with these fees the most. And you can basically just call it a negative yield, because you're getting hit on a monthly basis with these, and it really sucks. So I think that whole idea of leaving your money in the bank, especially as we see, what is it like? in the tens of trillions that's yielding negative now globally. I mean,
we just
it's
hit
like a
15
lot.
trillion. Here's the chart.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a shitload. And that, I mean, it's going completely vertical. So, you know, can it go up forever? Probably not. But, I wonder what that looks like after the explosion of. I don't know where we go from here. Actually, I don't.
I have,
I can't think of it. I don't know.
dude,
I
I
don't
have
know.
no clue. And that's what scares me. It's like people don't realize how insane things are getting, and no one's really paying attention, and it won't matter until it's like right in their face. Is what's going to
Right. It
happen.
won't matter until it matters. And somebody said that today actually on Twitter, and it was like, you can't. You can shill Bitcoin. You can talk about it. You can talk about the global macro landscape. You can talk about all of the insane things that are going on, and why it makes sense. But that can go in one ear and right out the other, right? At the end of the day, nobody really gives a shit because they take out their credit card. It still works. They can still pay their mortgage, their rent. They still have a job. All of the global political, geopolitical landscape, monetary, global monetary system, coming to a standstill here. Nobody cares because it doesn't matter to them yet. Their money still works. They're still going to have dinner tonight, and it's not going to make a difference. But that can change very quickly, which is when it will matter, right? And then you're going to have those people coming and asking you, "Hey, what do you think I should do about, what am I going to do here? How do I protect myself? How do I hedge?" And then you'll say, "Well, I've been talking about Bitcoin for the last 2 fucking years, and you didn't care the whole time." I don't know. It's tough because I don't know where we go from here, but it's everybody's waving the red flag of, you pick your favorite recession indicator and it's like flashing red right now.
Yeah, that's pretty much summarizes it up. Excuse me. It's getting pretty scary in the negative yield sense because you see a huge urgency for central banks to push for cashless society, and it's because they want to go full negative and they want to keep a new normal because they all know that here's the issue. And I think Paranoid Bull said it properly, and a bunch of people on Twitter have seen, and I think someone else, HKS55, he has a lion as his face or whatever. Anyways, our whole society runs on the fact that equity markets will stay up and not go down, that real estate will stay up and go down. And real estate prices are getting insane. Rent, etc., at least just we're buying, it's getting insane. And then you talk about stocks. Stocks are obviously PE ratios through the roof. And it's like for anyone trying to, if you're buying now, you're over the long term, as was it Raul said, basically in the next 10, 20 years, you have negative imputed return. So buying and holding stocks isn't good. Like you just can't look at this chart and be like, oh, in the long term, I'm good, because you're not. Like that's the scary thing.
Right. And
yeah,
no, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say and that's the whole function of society now. Like our pension system is loaded in stocks, and the issue is now they aren't heavy in bonds. Well, obviously they're heavy in bonds, but not to the comparison of what they are stock loaded now. Compared to past years where there actually was yield and interest rates when you're talking 5% yield on bonds or 6, you name it. And now when you're looking at 2% for 10-year bond, am I wrong? It's probably below that now. I haven't looked. You realize everyone's been forced into equities. If equities go down, and these pensions are supposed to they're supposed to target an unrealistic number of 7% per year on assets, and they don't even come close to it now. And look at the effing market.
and that doesn't even account for inflation, which is that's very rarely is that even taken into account to the best of my knowledge. But it's funny you mentioned that because I was talking to one of my coworkers who's getting closer to retirement age. I'd say within the next 36 months, he'll be ready to call it quits. And he looks at me and he's like, so do you think it's a good idea for someone heading into retirement to hold Bitcoin? And I answered within a millisecond. I was like, yes. And it was almost like that, and he probably has no clue that the yield curve is inverted everywhere and that we have $15 trillion in negative yielding debt. He probably has no clue. And I'm sitting here half his age thinking to myself, man, if I were retiring in the next 3 years, I'd be really fucking nervous. And, I told him absolutely. And, my rationale was, if you're looking at what's going on just globally, we're talking a really tiny portion of your overall net worth, say 1%, is like, it's nothing if you lose it. And especially if we're going to get into a recession, you're going to lose money anyway. So that 1% is not going to even matter. That can offset so much of your potential losses if there were a gigantic pullback in the markets. And we're in California. Like if his house, the value of his home gets cut in half, like that's his nut also. Like these people are literally homeowners in California who bought, let's say, 15 years ago, are banking on unloading their home for 7 figures and then taking that money, moving to another state and living off of it. And then they have whatever cash they saved up, and then they have their pensions, and then they have their 401k or whatever other retirements they have. And I'm like, yeah, man, for a couple $1,000, you can, it's a call option on future uncertainty, and that all of a sudden that could become a very substantial part of your net worth, like very quickly, and it will have offset all of the losses that you had. And that's the way I like to think about it, especially for
It's a hedge.
yeah, like as a hedge. And it's like, it would be no different than shilling gold, right? Like,
Yeah.
gold makes perfect sense. If you think that is a proper safe haven for you in particular, gold's broken out, and for perfectly good reason. It's the people are throwing the term safe haven around on CNBC constantly now, and that was like, I hadn't heard that ever, and now all of a sudden, we're talking about safe haven assets. So I can see the flock to gold. I can see the flock to Bitcoin from maybe the boomers whose kids have a little Bitcoin and have been talking about it. Maybe they started looking at it in 2017, or they're buying it in 2018. And I'll tell you what, these some of the boomers that I work with, like, they're interested in Bitcoin, and which I wouldn't have thought previously. Like, and you know why? Because the price keeps going up, and they know someone in the office has Bitcoin, and they keep asking me what the price is. And every time, like, and I know we always say price drives adoption. I'm sure it's getting old, but it is 100% the truth.
Yeah.
I remember when it dumped down to 32, and the same person was like, "Hey man, I heard Bitcoin's not doing too good." I'm like, "Yeah man, it looks like it's not going so hot. I'm definitely going to get some more." And then, here we are a couple months later. He's like, "What was it at?" I'm like, "Yeah man, pretty much 12,000." And he's like, "Holy shit." Like, I think 2 or 3 of the boomers in my office have signed up for an exchange, but like haven't taken that next step of either, linking their banking account, doing the wire transfer. Like, they get so fucking close, and then they can't buy. And but you know what? Dude, that's okay. And my bet is they don't buy until after 20K. Like, that's, once it gets past that, then you get the kick in the ass.
Too much work to do a wire transfer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like too much work. He's like, "Yeah, I got to do a wire. It doesn't work with my bank." I'm like, "All right, well, you should think about it soon." Like, I don't know how else to say it.
Like wires I don't get what most people just don't understand how to use wires. I'm like, what? Like, I'm like, you don't know, wiring or using AC, whatever you use. And it's crazy to me, because wiring is like such old tech. And now we're talking about Bitcoin, sending money over the internet. And, these people can't do a wire.
Dude, totally. And speaking of wire, I was thinking Fed wire. I know we just talked about the Fed. Did you see that announcement of like Fed Now? They're coming up with their own, not currency, but like new platform to basically, I guess, replace the Fed wire. So they have more instant settlement. Yeah. And I think I put it on my.
It's 2020, dude. It's like 2020. We can't be using technology from 1985 or 80, whatever it is. And you look at like certain countries like China, it's like, so, they're way ahead in that sense. Like,
yeah, totally. I mean, and I think they said
even Europe too.
I mean, right. The target date to get that done is like 2023, 2024 to launch it. And, somebody had put on Twitter, like, hopefully by that time, Bitcoin's taken over and we won't even need it. But I'm glad that they're thinking in that direction, because you'll just get obsoleted unless you try to compete. I think it makes XRP look like now that's totally irrelevant.
It's gonna be interesting to see what happens there.
I just don't at this point, I don't think Libra is going to happen. I don't think the Fed now thing is going to happen. I
Libra's dead in
don't.
the water.
I just don't. I don't see any of it actually happening. I think it's a lot of talk. It's a lot of, everyone's been expecting Fed coin, and I think that could happen probably maybe like in like China first, more dystopian. Like they already have everybody onboarded anyway on their cell phone. Like they control all payments anyway. It wouldn't be that much different to, quote unquote, tokenize it, and they can just increase the supply as they want, or negative interest rates. They can just take money out of your account right out of your wallet, right? Like you just get hit every month or whatever. They can just do that automatically. So while from a technological standpoint, it might sound good, but it's definitely not. But I don't think we're going to see it here first, because I think we're, as much as America is a software country, we are behind in terms of, using a smartphone for everything. Like it just, QR codes, little stuff where if you go to Japan or China or somewhere else and it's like totally normal here, you still have, I don't even know how to explain it. Like it will take a while for us to completely digitize. So there's still a lot of room to crush it.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the oil chart. Oil, we might be in a situation where we're going to have really, really cheap gas soon here. And Raul pointed this out, and this has just been something we've been watching. Oil, since it dumped in October last year, has just been on this, mainly downtrend. And it's going to be interesting to see if this happens. If this breaks, 29 a barrel would be pretty interesting. It would really hurt, obviously, some areas in the U.S. that there's a lot of oil. I assume California is one of those areas, if I remember correctly.
It could be. I'm thinking like Texas.
Obviously,
for
Texas.
sure.
Texas is a no-brainer, but I know I've seen some in California too, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, and to be honest with you, I think a lot of that, the price of oil has to do with the increase in supply. I mean, they're really pumping that shit out.
Yeah.
Big time. And then you combine that with something like that guy Steve Barber, who runs Upstream Data. He's like a downstream oil guy, like engineer, worked on a bunch of has been working in the oil industry for a decade or so, and he's building these like it's basically you have like it's like a 4 foot by 4 foot like metal container, and it has ASICs in it, like Bitcoin rigs, mining rigs, and you take the natural gas that is emitted from the oil production process that comes out, that they would have to flare or vent into the atmosphere otherwise, because it's too expensive to actually capture that energy and then transport it out, and you're just converting it into money instantly. So that's just like scratching the surface of what you're going to see from like an energy production standpoint. Like I don't see any reason why oil would not go up if these kinds of advancements are happening on the oil fields. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's just going to be interesting overall, because this negative yielding debt thing, as you said earlier, is going parabolic, and where we lead, it's gonna be, I don't know. The ending will not be pretty, to say the least, and there will be major consequences. I don't know how bad, but I just presuming how bad 2008 was, and people really don't understand how bad it was. I think a lot worse, and it's going to be very interesting to see this, because basically we've had like a free decade, and that free decade comes with consequences. As Paranoid Bull says, manipulation has consequences, and that's where we're at this day. Eventually the free market will win out, and I don't think it'll be that much longer. I've obviously lengthened my time horizon at this point, but I would be very shocked if we made it into, deep into 2020. It's going to be interesting. Start of a new decade might, mark the top, I think, would be a good way to end it.
Yeah, I know that. I mean, it is.
That's what I'm thinking now.
Yeah, no. I mean, that very well could be the case. And when you look at something like that with negative yielding debt and just kind of going vertical, I don't, I don't know what that looks like when it's over. Does that just continue? If it continues, what does that mean for safe haven assets like Bitcoin and gold? You're assuming also that we're going to see inflation. I've even seen it just with price inflation from the normal things that I buy already. Um, that people aren't just going to sit and let it happen. Like they're going to make some moves, and um, I it wouldn't surprise me to see. It'll be interesting to see how both gold and Bitcoin perform in a recession. Obviously, we know gold should do well. I mean, historically, it's always been thought of as a safe haven asset, so I wouldn't expect it to be any different this time around. And the real outlier here is Bitcoin.
Dude,
Um, you know,
and I just have to mention this. Silver is about to have its day too, and I know it doesn't make sense because silver's not as hard as gold, but still, it's gonna at some point here it's gonna go crazy. And the thing to keep in mind, I didn't mean to cut you off, is that J.P. Morgan, while the whole price of silver has been going down for the past basically almost decade, 9 years, 8 years, they have been stacking silver. So just keep that in mind.
no, that's a good point. I think you'll see a progression, right? You'll see the traditional safe haven assets, gold, silver. They'll make their moves. Everyone, Peter Schiff will be so fucking happy
Dude, it's gonna be great.
that
It's
that
gonna be the
gold is
best day for Skiff ever, dude.
like he's gonna be thrilled. And that's good. Like you want that price discovery. You want that. Um, what's the word I'm looking for? Confirmation that people are flocking to safe haven assets. And then, it would be interesting. You know how we saw you know, the excess of Bitcoin in 2017 kind of spilled over into alts, right? Everyone was pumping, everyone was catching the pump, you know, and then they dumped their BTC and got into alts heavily. And then, alts crashed like up 4 weeks later. I don't wonder if you'll see spillover from anybody who's doing well in gold or silver. If they're up 100%, I'm just throwing a number out there. Do do gold or silver holders say like, maybe I should, uh, you'll see that spillover effect and maybe into Bitcoin. I think that would be interesting. And now that I'm thinking about it, I want to see how that plays
I
out.
mean, I just say look at the alt BTC charts. Watch those. That would be the thing to watch. I mean,
Right.
look at this. I mean, every time these things pump, it's retarded when they do pump.
Right. It's a
That's
couple
why.
weeks. It's like 2 weeks of
Dude,
mayhem,
it's
and
a
that's
couple
it.
weeks, but we're talking hundreds, if not thousands percent, and that's why people fucking speculate in altcoins because what normally takes a full market cycle, if not more, for people to make in an equity market or any other type of trading, people make sitting with no leverage, in a position where they make 10x in a few weeks,
Right.
which is yeah, obviously
No,
very
it's
cool.
unbelievable, and it's funny because I look at that and I'm saying to myself, obviously I despise all coins, and I understand why they exist, and like I have to just come to terms with the fact that they'll never go away, no matter if I like them or not, because people like to speculate, and that's okay. They should.
Yeah,
I think you're seeing, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing if the majority of the market share of, let's call it just cryptocurrency in general, is dominated by Bitcoin, which that's to be assumed. And then if people want to speculate on other things, that's completely fine and understandable. I mean, I personally won't do it because I'm just going to end up losing more Bitcoin. I'm not going to even attempt, but I will watch everyone else do it and make memes about it. Um,
not Doge, no.
but like it's funny because now you're
Hey,
seeing new all-time lows happen
there we go.
when you measure these alts in Bitcoin, and uh, I don't think that's a surprise. I think and I'll tell you this just with the number of DMs that I'm getting from people who are saying I need to convert the rest of my alts. I like just need to make the time to do it. I must get a couple of those per day now for the last week or two, because I think people are starting to see the price increase, look at their shitcoin, wonder why it's not going anywhere or not moving up as much as Bitcoin. Then they're looking at their chart relative to Bitcoin, and it's like it's just heading towards all-time lows, even worse. So I think that last capitulation, there's a group of hodlers who are hodling all types of shit.
They're about to capitulate here, and
they're
then
about
we bounce. That's
exactly.
how it happens.
That's exactly right. So you need that last capitulation. You'll have people swoop in to try to buy those bags at an insane discount. They'll, the pump groups on Telegram will pump the shit out of them, and you'll have been wrecked. But I mean, you were wrecked anyway because you were holding the shit coins. But it's funny because I'm seeing it, and the only reason that people are saying that is because Bitcoin keeps going up in price. So I have a feeling there's a handful of hodlers who are still ready to dump the rest of those bags, and they haven't yet, but yeah. I assume that they will shortly.
And then of course, like in the coming months, something will happen stupid. It's just inevitable to human fear and greed cycle, and then hope. It's just gonna happen. That's the unfortunate reality. Just like any market, if it fucking moves, people are gonna fucking trade it, dude.
Right.
I think that's probably a pretty good way to wrap it up there.
Yeah, that was a good one. This is definitely wanted to talk about the negative yields. I mean, it's getting
insane.
Are going nuts.
It's getting going crazy.
Right. What a great time to be alive, to watch this, and to have a half decent understanding of Bitcoin and
money in general,
just money in general. So you can absolutely take advantage of these situations because there's asymmetric information in the marketplace. So all you just putting a little bit of time in will pay off. It could pay off. I mean, unbelievably well. And that's why it's so fun to talk about this, for sure. But thanks for listening to episode 32. Make sure to like and subscribe to this on YouTube. Follow us on Spotify and Instagram and Twitter. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. The reviews certainly do help. And share this with your friends. If they're starting to scratch their head and say, "What the fuck's going on here?" Shoot them this episode and see what they think. All right, peace.